In a cozy corner of a local restaurant, a scene unfolds that will change two lives forever. Elias Rowan, a widowed father working two jobs, sits across from his daughter Sophie, watching her eyes light up at the birthday candle on her modest dessert. This special dinner took weeks of careful budgeting, but seeing her smile makes it all worth it. Then comes the moment every parent dreads. His card declines. As shame creeps across his face, an elegant woman from the next table rises. Clara Whitmore, known for her philanthropy but haunted by loneliness, steps forward with quiet grace. It's not just about paying a bill. Something in Elias's dignity and Sophie's innocent warmth calls to her soul. What begins as a simple act of kindness is about to spiral into something neither of them could have imagined. Could fate have orchestrated this moment, bringing together two hearts from different worlds? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn breaks over the modest two-bedroom apartment as Elias's alarm chirps quietly. His fingers brush against the gold band still adorning his left hand. Sarah's ring, a constant reminder of what was and what could have been. The morning routine begins like a well-rehearsed dance. Shower while Sophie sleeps, prep her lunch, then gentle wakening with the scent of warming cinnamon rolls, the cheap kind from the store, but baked with love. "Morning, sunshine," he calls softly, watching his daughter's eyes flutter open. At 8, Sophie already carries herself with a grace beyond her years, something inherited from her mother. The thought brings a familiar ache to his chest, but he pushes it aside. There's no time for grief when there's a daughter to raise. The kitchen counter tells their story in unpaid bills and careful calculations. Security guard by day, retail stocker by night. Two jobs that barely keep them afloat. But Sophie never complains about the hand-me-down clothes or the missed dance classes. Instead, she helps sort coupons on Sunday afternoons, small fingers carefully cutting along dotted lines, telling him which cereals are on sale this week. "Dad?" Sophie's voice breaks through his reverie as she appears in her school uniform, slightly too short at the ankles. "Can you braid my hair like Mom used to?" The question hangs in the air, heavy with meaning. Elias's fingers might be clumsy with the strands, but he's learned. YouTube tutorials at midnight, practicing on doll heads from the thrift store. Anything to keep Sarah's memory alive in these small ways. The morning light catches the silver frame on the bookshelf. Sarah in her wedding dress, laughing at something just out of frame. 3 years gone, taken by an aggressive cancer that moved faster than their insurance could keep up with. The medical bills still arrive sometimes, a cruel reminder of all they lost. "Perfect timing, kiddo," he says, finishing the braid. "We've got 10 minutes before the bus." He hands her the worn backpack, checked twice to ensure her homework's complete. The sight of her skipping down the apartment stairs makes his heart swell. Somehow, despite everything, she's still full of joy. Last night's restaurant scene replays in his mind as he drives to his day job. The woman's kindness. Clara, he'd heard the maitre d' call her, still burns like a warm coal in his chest. Not just the paid bill, but the way she'd done it. Discreet, dignified, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her eyes had held no pity, only a kind of understanding that made him wonder about her own story. The security guard uniform feels heavier today as he clips on his badge. 8 hours of watching surveillance feeds and making rounds, then a quick dinner with Sophie before his sister Amy watches her for the night shift. The ring on his finger catches the fluorescent light, and he remembers Sarah's last words. "Promise me you'll find happiness again, Eli. Promise me you'll let love in." He hadn't promised, couldn't promise. How could he think about happiness when every day was a careful calculation of survival? But something about last night, about the way Clara had smiled at Sophie, about the genuine warmth in her eyes, it stirred something he thought had died with Sarah. The morning passes in its usual monotony of security checks and incident reports. During his lunch break, he pulls out his wallet and finds a business card he doesn't remember receiving. Clara Whitmore, Executive Director, Whitmore Foundation. On the back, in elegant handwriting, "If you ever need anything." His pride wants to tear it up, but Sarah's voice echoes in his memory. "Don't let pride steal joy from our little girl." He tucks the card back into his wallet, next to the fading photo of Sarah holding newborn Sophie, the past and the possible future separated by a thin leather fold. Outside his security booth, life goes on, people rushing to meetings, carrying coffee cups and ambitions. Elias watches them through the cameras, wondering how many others are carrying hidden stories of loss and love behind their hurried facades. The afternoon sun casts long shadows through the lobby windows as he completes another round. In 12 hours, he'll be stocking shelves at the supermarket, trying not to calculate how many hours of work it would have taken to afford that birthday dinner. But for now, he focuses on the present moment, on doing this job well, on being the father Sophie deserves, even if his heart whispers that maybe, just maybe, there's room for something more. The Whitmore Foundation's boardroom gleams with old money and new ambitions. Clara sits at the head of the mahogany table, her mother's voice from breakfast still ringing in her ears. "Darling, you're 38. The clock isn't just ticking, it's practically screaming." She straightens the portfolio before her, a leather-bound testament to the Foundation's charitable works that somehow feels hollow today. "As you can see from the quarterly reports," Clara addresses the board, her voice carrying the polished refinement of finishing schools and inherited responsibility, "our community outreach programs have exceeded expectations." The projector hums, numbers dance across the screen, but her mind wanders to a small restaurant and a father's dignified struggle. Harrison. Blake, her mother's choice for suitable husband material, drones on about investment strategies. His perfect teeth flash in practiced smiles, his family's banking fortune making him an ideal match. Clara catches her reflection in the window. Designer suit, expertly styled hair, the perfect mask of success. Only the empty echo of her penthouse. At night, knows different. Between meetings, she finds herself pulling up the Foundation's payment record from the restaurant. Table 7, birthday dinner, the receipt reads. She hadn't planned to leave her card, but something in the father's eyes, not defeat, but determined love, had moved her. Now, in the artificial quiet of her corner office, she wonders about their story. "Miss Whitmore?" Her assistant interrupts with the day's society pages. There she is again, Boston's most eligible heiress. The article questioning why someone with her credentials remains unmarried. The photo shows her at last, week's charity gala, smiling that careful smile that never quite reaches her eyes. If they only knew how suffocating it all felt. The Foundation's latest annual report sits on her desk, her photo on the cover projecting confidence and compassion. Inside, hundreds of success stories, millions in charitable giving. Yet she can't stop thinking about one small act of kindness that felt more real than all of it. She'd seen something genuine in that restaurant, a father's love, a child's joy, a family bond that all her family's wealth couldn't manufacture. Lunch arrives. Some overpriced salad she barely tastes. Her mother's social secretary has already called twice about the upcoming benefit gala. Harrison will be there, the message hints, not so subtly. Clara moves the salad around her plate, remembering the little girl's, Sophie's, delight over a simple birthday dessert. The afternoon brings a board meeting for another family holding. More suits, more strategic smiles, more careful navigation of expectations. The Whitmore legacy, her father always says, is not just about money, it's about responsibility. But sitting here, listening to discussions about profit margins and market share, Clara wonders about different kinds of responsibility. Her phone buzzes with texts from her younger sister in Paris. Mum's on the warpath about grandchildren again. Better you than me. Easy for Catherine to say, living her artistic life away from Boston's social pressures. Clara closes the message, opens her calendar. Endless charity functions, board meetings, carefully orchestrated appearances. The sun sets over the city as she finally leaves the office. Her driver, James, knows better than to attempt conversation. The penthouse rises before her, 60 floors of luxury and loneliness. Inside, art, worth. Millions adorns walls that have never heard a child's laughter. Her heels echo on marble floors as she pours a glass of wine, standing before floor-to-ceiling windows that showcase a city she helps govern but doesn't feel part of. A notification pops up. Tomorrow's schedule includes reviewing grant applications for the Foundation's education initiative. She thinks of Sophie, wondering if her school might benefit from such a program. It would be easy enough to look into, to perhaps engineer another meeting that would seem coincidental. But something stops her. The memory of Elias's quiet dignity, his careful pride. Clara slips off her heels, lets down her hair, and for a moment stands before her bedroom mirror, seeing herself as she really is. Not the heiress, not the philanthropist, but a woman who glimpsed something real and true in a simple restaurant moment. Her mother's voice nags about biological clocks and suitable matches, but for the first time in years, Clara feels something different stirring, something that has nothing to do with social calendars or family expectations. She falls asleep with the city lights painting patterns on her ceiling, dreaming of genuine smiles and simple joys, of a father's love and a child's laughter. In her dreams, she's not wearing any masks at all. Saturday morning paints Washington Park in autumn colors, leaves dancing across worn playground equipment. Elias watches Sophie on the swings, her weekend freedom evident in every pump of her legs toward the sky. These precious morning hours between his jobs belong to her, no matter how tired he might be, no matter what bills wait at home. "Higher, Dad! Higher!" she calls, and he obliges, pushing gently. Her laughter carries across the park, a sound so much like Sarah's it catches in his throat. A few other parents dot the playground, most focused on phones or coffee cups. None of them seem to notice the elegant woman who has just entered through the wrought iron gates, looking somehow both purposeful and uncertain. But Sophie notices. "Dad, look! It's the nice lady from my birthday." Her voice carries clear and bright across the morning air. Clara Whitmore turns at the sound, and something in her carefully composed expression softens. She's dressed casually today, if designer. Jeans and a cashmere sweater can be called casual, but there's still that same warmth in her eyes that Elias remembers. "Hello, Sophie," Clara calls, approaching with a natural grace that makes even the simple act of walking across wood chips seem dignified. "You're quite the skilled swing pilot." Sophie beams at the compliment, pumping her legs harder. Elias feels his chest tighten, caught between gratitude and that persistent pride. "Ms. Whitmore." He manages, nodding politely. "Thank you again for the other night." The words feel inadequate, but she waves them away with a gentle gesture. "Please, it's Clara, and I often walk here on Saturday mornings." The slight flush in her cheeks suggests this might not be entirely true, but before Elias can ponder this, Sophie has launched herself from the swing in a graceful arc, landing with the fearless confidence of childhood. "Want to see my drawing?" Sophie asks, already pulling her ever-present sketchbook from her backpack. "I drew you helping us at the restaurant." The picture shows 3 stick figures, one tall with spiky hair, Elias, one small with a party hat, Sophie, and one with flowing hair and what appears to be a golden aura around her, Clara apparently rendered as an angel. Clara kneels down, designer jeans, meeting wood chips without hesitation to examine the artwork. "This is wonderful, Sophie. You've captured everyone perfectly." Her voice holds no condescension, just genuine appreciation. "Do you like to draw?" What follows is a 10-minute dissertation from Sophie on her artistic aspirations, complete with impromptu gallery showing of her sketchbook's contents. Elias watches, amazed, as Clara gives each drawing her complete attention, asking thoughtful questions and offering encouraging comments. There's nothing performed about her interest. It's as real as Sophie's enthusiasm. She's very talented, Clara says softly to Elias, as Sophie runs off to demonstrate her monkey bar skills. Has she had any art lessons? The question isn't meant to sting, but it does. Not yet, he answers carefully. Maybe when things are different. He doesn't mention the art class brochures he's collected, the programs he's researched late at night, all just out of financial reach. Clara seems to understand what he's not saying. The Whitmore Foundation sponsors several youth art programs, she offers, then quickly adds, not that you need, I mean Sophie's talent deserves nurturing, that's all. Before Elias can respond, Sophie calls out, watch this! They both turn to see her attempting a particularly ambitious monkey bar maneuver. Clara gasps softly as Sophie wobbles, but Elias remains calm. He knows his daughter's capabilities, has watched her practice this move for weeks. She's fearless, Clara observes, as Sophie completes the trick successfully. Like her mother. Elias replies without thinking, then feels the familiar weight of that truth settle around him. To his surprise, Clara doesn't offer platitudes or change the subject. Tell me about her, she says simply. And for a moment, Elias considers it. There's something in Clara's direct gaze that makes him want to share Sarah's story, to speak her name in daylight instead of just whispered memories. But Sophie's running back, full of 8-year-old energy and plans for the remaining playground equipment. The moment passes, yet something has shifted in the morning air. Clara checks her watch. A T, subtle gesture that somehow lacks the dismissiveness such actions usually carry. I should go, she says but lingers. I'm usually here Saturday mornings, for the walk, I mean. This time, they both know it's not quite true, but neither mentions it. Sophie waves goodbye with her whole body, the way children do, and Clara's answering wave carries the same unself-conscious joy. Elias watches her leave, her figure elegant against the autumn trees. Sophie's drawing captures his attention. The golden aura around Clara's stick figure seems less fanciful now, more like his daughter's uncanny ability to see the truth of people. The credit card statement sits on Elias's kitchen table like an accusation. Declined transactions tell the story of his careful financial juggling act, each one a small wound to his pride. The restaurant charge, now void, seems to mock him with its memory. He should be grateful for Clara's intervention. He knows this, but gratitude and shame make uncomfortable bedfellows. His sister Amy sorts through bills while Sophie does homework in the next room. You know, Amy says carefully, there's no shame in accepting help sometimes. She's been his rock since Sarah died, watching Sophie during night shifts, offering what support she can on a teacher's salary. But this is different. It's not about help, Elias responds, running a tired hand through his hair. It's about... He trails off, unable to articulate the complexity of his feelings. How can he explain that Clara's kindness, genuine as it seems, highlights everything he can't provide for his daughter? Amy picks up the local newspaper, and Elias's stomach tightens. There in the society pages, Clara Whitmore at some charity gala, elegant in evening wear that probably costs more than his monthly salary. Boston's premier philanthropist continues family legacy, the headline reads. The article mentions the Whitmore Foundation's millions in charitable giving, their influence in local politics, their old money status in Boston society. She seems kind, Amy offers, studying the photo, and Sophie hasn't stopped talking about her since the park. It's true, his daughter has added Clara to her bedtime prayers, right after Mom in Heaven and before her teacher, Ms. Martinez. She lives in a different world, Elias says finally. You should see her, Amy. Everything about her screams old money, proper upbringing. She probably has more in her checking account than I'll make in a lifetime. And yet she spent her Saturday Morning, looking at an 8-year-old's drawings in a public park, Amy counters. Money doesn't define character, Eli. Sarah taught us that, remember? He does remember. Sarah, who came from considerable wealth herself, but chose to teach elementary school, who never let her family's disapproval of her downward mobility affect her choices, who loved simply and completely, without regard for social status. The memory of her strengthens him, even as it hurts. I just don't want Sophie getting attached, he says finally. Clara's being kind, but people like that. They drift in and out of lives like ours, doing their good deeds, then moving on to the next worthy cause. Is that what you really think of her? Amy's question is gentle, but pointed. Because the woman I've heard about from Sophie sounds genuine. And you forget, I saw how she handled the restaurant situation. No fanfare, no condescension, just quiet dignity, rather like someone else I know. Before Elias can respond, Sophie emerges from her room with a fresh drawing. This one shows the park scene, Clara kneeling in wood chips, examining Sophie's sketchbook. The detail is remarkable for an 8-year-old. Clara's interested expression, the casual elegance of her pose, the way she'd given Sophie her complete attention. Can we go to the park again tomorrow, Dad? Sophie asks, hope bright in her eyes. Maybe Clara will be there again. She said she walks there on Saturdays, remember? Elias exchanges a look with Amy, who raises an eyebrow in that infuriatingly knowing way sisters have. I have to work tomorrow morning, sweetheart, he says, hating the disappointment that crosses his daughter's face. I could take her, Amy offers, too casually. I need a walk anyway, and the park's so lovely this time of year. Subtle, Amy, real subtle. But he's smiling despite himself. His sister's matchmaking is about as delicate as a sledgehammer, but he can't deny the small flutter of anticipation at the thought of seeing Clara again. The declined credit card statement still sits on the table, a reminder of the vast gulf between their worlds. Yet something in him rebels against his own cynicism. Perhaps it's Sarah's memory, or Sophie's unquestioning acceptance of good in people, or maybe just the way Clara had listened, really listened, to his daughter with genuine interest. Just don't get your hopes up, he tells Sophie, even as he realizes he's talking to himself as well. Clara's a busy woman. She probably has important meetings and fancy events to attend. Sophie just smiles, adding final touches to her drawing. She'll be there, she says, with the absolute certainty of childhood. She promised to tell me about the art classes at her foundation, remember? Elias looks at Amy, who shrugs as if to say, what's the worst that could happen? The worst, he knows, would be letting himself believe in possibilities that can't exist. Yet Sarah's voice echoes in his memory. Life's too short for walls we build ourselves, Eli. The credit card statement catches the evening light. It's declined. Transactions a stark reminder of his reality, but for the first time he allows himself to wonder if some walls might be worth questioning after all. Dear Diary, I found myself back at Washington Park today, 3rd Saturday in a row. Who am I becoming? The society pages would have a field day. Whitmore Heiress trades charity galas for playground wood chips. But there's something about watching Sophie draw, something about the way Elias tries not to hover, but always keeps her in sight. Mother called again about Harrison. He's perfect, she insists, meaning perfectly boring, perfectly proper, perfectly hollow, like all the others at the endless rotation of charity events and board meetings. They wear their wealth like armor, but Elias wears his integrity, like a quiet crown, even if he doesn't see it. I catch myself thinking about him at the most inappropriate moments. During budget meetings, I wonder how he manages his household accounts. At foundation galas, I imagine him working his night shift, keeping others safe while they sleep. It's ridiculous, this fascination. He probably thinks I'm condescending, another rich woman playing at being charitable. But Sophie sees me, really sees me, not the Whitmore name or the foundation director, just Clara. Today she showed me more drawings. One was of her mother. Dad doesn't like to talk about her, she whispered. But I thought you should know about her. She was beautiful and kind like you. I nearly cried right there in the park. The Foundation's quarterly reports sit unopened on my desk. Instead, I've been researching our youth art programs. We have 3 in Sophie's district, all with waiting lists. A word from me could, but no. Elias's pride is not something to be casually overridden. It's part of what draws me to him, if I'm being honest with myself. I overheard him talking to his sister today. Amy, I think her name is. They didn't see me approaching the playground. She's just being kind, Eli, Amy was saying. Not everyone has an agenda. His response haunts me. In her world, there's always an agenda. He's right, of course. My world is built on agendas, on careful calculations of social capital and influence. The Whitmore name opens doors, but it also traps me behind them. Mothers. Voice echoes. Darling, you're not getting any younger. The foundation needs stability. The family needs heirs. But what do I need? I look at my reflection sometimes in the marble bathrooms of luxury hotels or the mirrored walls of charity venues, and I barely recognize myself. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, perfect smile, all carefully maintained. Then I think of Sophie's drawing of me kneeling in wood chips, and I see something different. Something real, Harrison called today. Another dinner invitation, another chance to merge old money with old money. I declined. Clara, he said, perfectly practiced concern in his voice, your mother worries about you. Let her worry. For the first time in years, I'm worried about myself, worried that I've been sleepwalking through my own life. The youth art program applications mock me from my desk. It would be so easy to arrange things, to open doors without seeming to, but that's the old way, the Whitmore way, power wielded with velvet gloves. Elias deserves better. Sophie deserves better. Maybe I deserve better too. I catch myself planning. My Saturday mornings now, timing my walks to coincide with their playground visits, planning what to wear, trying to look casual while wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The irony doesn't escape me. But when Sophie runs up with a new drawing, when Elias gives one of his rare unguarded smiles, I feel something I haven't felt since I was Sophie's age, real. Mother's latest society pages clipping stares at me. Last of the Whitmore line, when will Clara choose? Choose what? Another Harrison, another perfect match that would perpetuate this gilded cage. I think of Elias's wedding ring, how he still wears it, how it speaks of a love so genuine it transcends loss. When did I become someone who envies not wealth or status, but simple authenticity? The foundation board meets tomorrow. Another day of perfect smiles and careful negotiations. But for now, in these private pages, I can admit what I'm afraid to. Say aloud, I'm falling for a security guard who works 2 jobs, who carries his grief with quiet dignity, who looks at his daughter like she's the greatest treasure in the world. And I'm terrified. Clara. The newspaper sat untouched on Clara's desk, its headlines screaming in bold type, Whitmore heiress's shocking proposal, true love or calculated charity. The photo below showed Elias and Clara at the park, clearly taken with a telephoto lens. Sophie's face was mercifully blurred, but the damage was done. The previous day's events now belonged to the public eye. It hadn't been planned. That's what Clara kept telling herself as her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from family, board members and gossip columnists. The autumn morning had started like their other Saturday meetings, Sophie drawing, Elias watching carefully, Clara pretending she just happened to be taking her regular walk. But something had been different. Maybe it was the way Sophie had fallen asleep on the bench, her head resting against Clara's cashmere shoulder without hesitation. Maybe it was how Elias had looked at them both, a mix of tenderness and terror in his eyes. Or maybe it was simply time, the inevitable collision of 2 worlds that had been gravitating toward each other for weeks. She trusts you, Elias had said softly, watching his daughter sleep. She doesn't trust easily, not since Sarah. The mention of his late wife's name hung in the air between them, not as a barrier, but as a bridge. Sometimes I think she sees things more clearly than I do. Clara had touched Sophie's hair gently, this child who had somehow claimed a piece of her heart. Children often do. Her voice had trembled slightly. "Elias, don't," he'd interrupted, though not unkindly. "Whatever you're about to say, please don't let it be about helping us or offering opportunities or marry me." The words had fallen from her lips before she could catch them, surprising her as much as him. Sophie had stirred slightly but didn't wake, as if the universe wanted to preserve this moment between the adults. "What?" Elias's voice had been barely a whisper. "Marry me," she'd repeated, more firmly this time. "Not for money, not for charity, not for any reason except that I love spending Saturday mornings in a public park with a security guard and his amazing daughter. Because I love how you never let Sophie skip her homework even when she's tired. Because I love that you still wear Sarah's ring, that you honor her memory while somehow making room in your heart for new possibilities." Elias had stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Clara, you don't know what you're saying. Our worlds are different?" "Yes, thank God. My world is full of people like Harrison Blake who think love is a business merger and marriage is a social strategy. Your world..." She gestured to Sophie, to the worn backpack full of drawings, to the dignity with which Elias carried his responsibilities. "Your world is real." A jogger had passed by, done a double take, and Clara realized too late that she was still very much Clara Whitmore, that phones were probably already capturing this scene. But for once, she didn't care about appearances. "People will say I'm taking advantage of you," Elias had said finally. "People will say you're taking advantage of me," she'd countered. "People will say a lot of things. Let them. I'm tired of living for people's expectations." Sophie had chosen that moment to wake up, blinking at them both with childhood wisdom. "Did you finally ask Dad to marry you?" she'd asked Clara sleepily. "I drew a picture of our wedding last week. Want to see?" Now, staring at the newspaper, Clara couldn't help but smile despite the chaos. Her mother had already left 12 voicemails, each more dramatically horrified than the last. The foundation board was calling an emergency meeting. Harrison Blake had sent a tersely worded email about considering her reputation, but on her desk, propped against her laptop, was Sophie's drawing of the wedding. 3 figures stood under a flower arch: Elias in a suit, Clara in a simple dress, not the elaborate ball gown her mother would insist upon, and Sophie in the middle, holding both their hands. Above them, drawn with a child's understanding of heaven, was a smiling figure. Clara knew must be Sarah giving her blessing. Her phone buzzed again. Elias this time. "Are you okay?" his text read. "The media circus. I never wanted this for you." Clara touched the newspaper headline, then Sophie's drawing, feeling the difference between public perception and private truth. "I'm better than okay," she typed. Back. "I'm finally real." The emergency board meeting would start in an hour. Her mother would arrive any minute, armed with social strategies and damage control plans. But for the first time in her life, Clara felt fully, completely certain of her path. Margaret Whitmore's social calendar lay open on her mahogany desk, its pages filled with meticulously planned events, now thrown into chaos. With a heavy platinum pen, she crossed out Clara plus Harrison, engagement announcement gala, scheduled for next month. Her daughter's scandal had already disrupted 3 generations of careful social engineering. "Darling," she addressed Clara, who stood by the library window of the family mansion, "surely you can see this as the impulsive gesture it is. We can handle the press, spin this as one of your charitable projects gone a bit overboard." She flipped through her calendar, already planning damage control events. "The Blakes are being surprisingly understanding. Harrison is still willing..." "Stop." Clara's voice was quiet but firm. "This isn't an impulsive gesture or a charitable project. This is my life." Across town, in a modest apartment, another family meeting was taking place. Amy sat at Elias's kitchen table, Sophie's drawings spread before them like evidence in a case. "Have you lost your mind?" she asked, but her tone held more wonder than accusation. "Clara Whitmore? The Clara Whitmore? Trust me, I know how it sounds." Elias paced the small kitchen, his security guard uniform still on from his day shift. "But Amy, she's not what you'd expect. When she's with Sophie, when she's just being herself—" "Did you see this?" Amy held up the morning paper. "You're going to be thrown into a media circus. Sophie's life will change completely. Are you ready for that?" Back in the Whitmore mansion, Clara faced down her mother's increasingly dramatic predictions. "The foundation board will need reassurance," Margaret continued, checking her phone, "and the governor's wife just texted. Apparently they're concerned about next month's charity gala." "I've never seen you like this," Clara's father spoke for the first time, looking up from his leather armchair. "Not since you were a little girl and insisted on attending public school for a month. Remember how that ended?" Clara did remember. She'd made real friends for the first time, only to have them drift away when they realized the weight of the Whitmore name, the expectations that came with playdates at the mansion. "This is different," she said firmly. "I'm different." In Elias's apartment, Sophie sat at her small desk, seemingly unconcerned with the adult drama unfolding around her. She worked on a new drawing, humming quietly. "Dad," she called out, interrupting Amy's list of potential complications. "Do you think Clara would want to help coach my art club at school?" Mrs. Peterson said, "We need more parent volunteers." The simple question hung in the air, cutting through the complexity of the situation. Elias and Amy exchanged looks, remembering how their own mother had volunteered at school events, how normal and special it had felt. "The media will dig into everything," Amy warned softly. "Sarah's death, your 2 jobs, the medical bills." "Let them," Elias replied, watching his daughter draw. "We have nothing to be ashamed of." Meanwhile, Clara's phone buzzed with a text from her younger sister Catherine in Paris. "Finally, someone in this family choosing love over lineage. Don't you dare back down, Clara. P.S. That picture of Sophie in the park, adorable. Can't wait to meet my new niece." Margaret saw the small smile on Clara's face. "Catherine always encouraged your unconventional tendencies," she sniffed. "But really, Clara, a security guard? What could you possibly have in common?" Clara thought of Saturday mornings in the park, of Sophie's unguarded affection, of Elias's quiet strength. "Everything that matters," she answered. Across town, Sophie brought her finished drawing to show her father and aunt. It showed their apartment building with a new addition sketched on top, a rooftop garden. "Clara told me the foundation does community projects," she explained. "Maybe we could make one. For Mom, she always wanted a garden." Elias felt tears prick his eyes, even as Amy squeezed his hand in support. This was what the newspapers couldn't capture, what Margaret Whitmore couldn't understand. The simple way love builds bridges, creates families, heals hearts. His phone lit up with a text from Clara. Mothers planning an intervention. Fathers hiding in his study. Board members are calling hourly. "I've never been happier. How are you holding up?" Looking at Sophie's drawing, at Amy's concerned but supportive face, at the life he and Sarah had built that somehow had room for new love, he typed back, "Terrified, grateful, sure." The social calendar on Margaret's desk and Sophie's growing collection of drawings told 2 different stories about the same moment. One of careful plans disrupted, the other of new dreams taking root. Both were true, both were changing, and neither would ever be quite the same. Late at night, after his second shift, Elias sat at his kitchen table with a worn notebook before him. 2 columns stretched down the page. Reasons for and reasons against. The pragmatic approach felt almost absurd when applied to matters of the heart, but he needed this, needed to see it all laid out in his own handwriting, needed to make sense of a decision that would change not just his life, but Sophie's. Under Against financial inequality, media attention, society pressure, Sophie's routine disrupted, Sarah's memory, class differences, cultural clash, too fast, under 4, Clara's genuine kindness, Sophie's happiness, chance for a complete family, art classes for Sophie, Clara's respect for Sarah's memory, real connection, natural with Sophie, makes me laugh, sees me, not my circumstances. The list felt simultaneously overwhelming and inadequate. How could he reduce this complexity to 2 columns? Clara's proposal had unleashed a tornado of emotions and practical considerations that no pro-con list could fully capture. His phone buzzed, a text from Clara. "Can't sleep. Thinking about how Sophie said her art club needs parent volunteers. I used to teach art, before the foundation took over my life. He hadn't known that. It was these little revelations that kept surprising him, showing him the woman behind the Whitmore name. Another point for the 4 column. She shares pieces of herself. Sarah's photo watched from the bookshelf as he added to his list. The ring on his finger caught the late-night kitchen light, and he found himself talking to her, as he often did in quiet moments. "What would you say about all this, love? You always knew better than me when it came to matters of the heart." He could almost hear her laugh, see her shake her head at his methodical approach to love. A memory surfaced. Sarah, in her final days, making him promise to stay open to joy. "Life's too precious for closed doors, Eli," she'd said. "Promise me you won't use me as an excuse to stop living." He added another line to the 4 column. Keeping promise to Sarah. Sophie's latest drawing was magneted to the refrigerator, their potential family at the park, Clara teaching her how to sketch the trees. His daughter's artistic talent was blooming. Under Clara's encouragement, finding new confidence in her natural abilities. Another point, Sophie's growth. The against column stared back at him, full of practical concerns. The media attention had already begun to affect them. Reporters outside Sophie's school, photographers at the park. Clara had immediately hired security for them, not as a power play, but out of genuine concern for Sophie's well-being. Add to 4, protective of Sophie. His sister Amy's words echoed, "Sometimes the biggest risks bring the greatest rewards." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one facing marriage into one of Boston's oldest families, yet even as he thought it, he knew he was being unfair. Clara had never once made him feel less than her equal. He added to his list, against living in her world. Then after a moment's reflection, crossed it out and wrote under 4, creating our own world. The late hour made everything feel both clearer and more surreal. In less than 24 hours, Clara would expect an answer. The foundation board was meeting tomorrow. Her family was pressuring her for a response, and the media was spinning wild narratives about their relationship. His phone buzzed again. "Clara, Mother's threatened to disinherit me. I told her I'd rather have Saturday mornings in the park than all the Whitmore millions." "I meant it." Elias stared at the message, then back at his list. Something shifted in his perspective, like a camera lens finally finding its focus. The reasons against column suddenly looked like what it was, a list of external pressures and societal expectations. The reasons for column spoke of connection, growth, and love. He picked up his pen one last time, drawing a line through both columns. At the bottom of the page he wrote simply, "Sarah chose love over family expectations. Clara's choosing love over wealth and status. Maybe it's time I choose love over fear." The first light of dawn was creeping through his kitchen window. Soon Sophie would wake up for school, Clara would face her foundation board, and he would need to give an answer that would reshape all their lives. He looked at the pro-con list one last time, then folded it carefully and placed it in the box where he kept Sarah's letters. Whatever came next, he wanted to remember this moment of clarity, when all the logical arguments in the world bowed before the simple truth of the heart. Boston Daily Herald, Front page exclusive. Whitmore heiress. Love or charity case. By Jennifer Martinez. The headlines screamed across every local paper, each taking a different angle on the story that had captured Boston's imagination. Tabloid. Photographers camped outside Elias's apartment building, their long lenses trained on every mundane moment. Sophie's morning walk to the school bus had become a gauntlet of flashing cameras and shouted questions. Is your father marrying Clara? Whitmore for her money. How does it feel to be Boston's newest Cinderella story? Did you know your father's medical debt history? Clara had arranged for private security, but the media found ways. They dug up Sarah's obituary, published speculation about her medical bills. They'd found Elias's bankruptcy filing after her death, the second job he'd taken to stay afloat. Every private struggle was now public fodder. Sources close to the Whitmore family suggest this may be Clara's most dramatic act of charity yet. One article posited, the heiress, known for her philanthropic work, has a history of taking on passion projects, but is this time different? The foundation's board members had been quoted anonymously, expressing concerns about the integrity of our charitable mission. Harrison Blake gave an exclusive interview about his deep worry for Clara's judgment. Even Margaret Whitmore's carefully worded statement seemed designed to leave room for damage control. While we support Clara's compassionate nature, we trust she will make decisions that honor the Whitmore legacy. Elias kept the papers away from Sophie, but children at school had smartphones and gossip-hungry parents. Tommy said you're going to be rich now, she told him one morning, her voice small. He said I don't have to wear hand-me-downs anymore, but Dad, I like my clothes. Amy helped me pick them. The cruelty of public scrutiny hit hardest in these moments. Clara had faced it all her life, knew how to wear it like a second skin, but for Elias and Sophie, privacy had been their sanctuary. Now strangers debated their worthiness in comment sections and social media threads. Gold digger or true love? What the security guard's past reveals, screamed one particularly vicious headline. They'd found his high school records, his early attempts at community college before Sarah's illness forced him to drop out. Every detail twisted to fit their narrative. Clara handled it with practiced grace. Let them talk, she said during one of their now precious private moments. They wrote the same things when my mother married my father. Old money versus new. Money then. Now it's just money versus love. Nothing changes except the decade, but Elias saw how it wore on her. The foundation's donations had taken a hit, some conservative donors pulling support over the scandal. Her mother's friends whispered about mental breakdowns and midlife crises. The society pages, once her ally, now painted her as either a fool or a saint. Neither portrait capturing the real woman who still showed up at the park on Saturdays to teach Sophie about perspective in art. The worst came when they found Sarah's family. Her wealthy parents, who'd cut contact when she married beneath her station, suddenly emerged to give interviews about their concerns for their granddaughter. They'd never once reached out during Sarah's illness, never offered help with the mounting medical bills, never met Sophie. Now they posed as concerned grandparents, suggesting Clara's interest might not be in the child's best interest. I'm so sorry, Elias told Clara one evening, after another day of headlines. You shouldn't have to defend loving us. Clara's response was to kiss him, right there on his front stoop, in full view of the paparazzi's cameras. The next day's photos showed not the calculated charity case they wanted to portray, but something raw and real. A woman in expensive clothes sitting on worn concrete steps, her head on a security guard's shoulder, both of them laughing at the absurdity of it all. Sophie's art teacher sent home a note. Due to media disruption, we request that parents refrain from classroom visits at this time. It was the last straw for Clara. She called a press conference, her first public acknowledgement of the situation. My father built the Whitmore Foundation on the belief that worth isn't measured by wealth, she told the assembled reporters. If you want a story, report this. I'm marrying a man who works 2 jobs to give his daughter everything she needs, who shows up every day, loves completely, and never once asked me for anything except to be myself. That's the headline you should be running. The media storm raged on, but something shifted that day. In their rush to paint either a scandal or a fairy tale, they'd missed the simple truth captured in Sophie's newest drawing. 3 people building a family. One Saturday morning. At a time, the joint bank account paperwork lay unsigned on Clara's desk. A simple document that somehow represented everything complicated about their situation. It's practical, she'd explained, pushing aside a stack of foundation reports. For Sophie's, art classes, for household expenses, for keeping me from feeling like a charity case. Elias had finished quietly, but without anger. They were learning to navigate these moments, these collisions of their different worlds. Now, a week later, the paperwork remained untouched while they found their rhythm in smaller ways. Clara learned to make Sophie's lunch for school days when Elias worked double shifts, simple sandwiches that would have scandalized her personal chef. Elias learned that Clara stress-baked at midnight, a habit left over from boarding school when she'd sneak into the kitchen to make cookies that tasted like home. You don't have to keep your penthouse, she told him one evening as they sat in his small kitchen. Sophie was asleep, and the night shift didn't start for another hour. We could find a place that's ours, not my world, not yours, something new. He watched her stir honey into tea with his mismatched spoons, wearing silk pajamas in his ceramic-tiled kitchen. You love that penthouse, he said carefully. The view, the space for your art collection. I love this kitchen more, she replied simply. It feels lived in, like a home should. She didn't mention the photographer she'd spotted earlier, documenting her descent into middle-class life, as one blog had put it. The next morning, Elias found a new addition to their routine. Clara had packed his lunch for his security shift. The sandwich was slightly lopsided, the apple cut inexpertly to remove the bruised parts. It was the first lunch anyone had made him since Sarah. He ate every imperfect bite. They were building trust in these small moments, these quiet victories over their own prejudices and fears. Clara learned to check prices at restaurants, not because Elias asked, but because she saw how he did it automatically, years of careful budgeting ingrained in his habits. Elias learned to accept when Clara bought Sophie art supplies, understanding it wasn't charity, but the joy of someone who remembered her own childhood dreams of being an artist. The unsigned bank account papers witnessed their dancing around bigger issues. Clara's wealth wasn't going away, no matter how many simple sandwiches she made. Elias's pride wasn't going to dissolve, no matter how many times he reminded himself that love meant partnership. Dad, Sophie asked one morning, watching Clara attempt to iron her school uniform. Another first. The Whitmore heiress had never ironed anything in her life. Is Clara going to live here with us? Because I think she needs help with that iron. The question hung in the air, domestic and enormous at once. Clara looked up, her designer blouse now spotted with watermarks, and they all burst out laughing. It was the kind of moment no society column could capture, the absurdity and beauty of 2 worlds trying to become one. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep and Clara had gone home to deal with foundation matters, Elias sat with the bank account papers. His signature would mean more than joint finances. It would mean accepting that their lives were truly merging, that Clara's resources were part of their shared future. His phone buzzed with a text from her. I just tried to make coffee with my fancy machine and nearly flooded the kitchen. Pretty sure your $20 coffee maker is smarter than I am. Also, I miss you both already. He looked at Sarah's photo on the bookshelf, at Sophie's latest drawing of their growing family, at the iron. Clara had managed to scorch despite its auto-shutdown feature. Love, he was learning, wasn't about being ready or worthy or equal. It was about being willing to burn a few shirts, make crooked sandwiches, and trust that somewhere between his world and hers, they could build something real. The next morning, Clara found the bank account papers in her foundation inbox. Elias's signature was there, not just on the required line, but on a post-it note attached. Sophie needs new art supplies. Thought you might want to help pick them out. E. It wasn't surrender or charity. It was trust, offered one signature at a time. Clara added her own name next to his, then opened her calendar to block out Saturday morning. Some things were more important than foundation meetings, like teaching a little girl how to draw while her father watched them both, his face soft with a love that had nothing to do with bank accounts. The letter had remained sealed for 3 years, tucked away in the box of Sarah's things that Elias kept in his closet. "Open it when you're ready to love again," Sarah had written on the envelope in her final days, her handwriting already showing signs of the medication's effects. Now, sitting on their bed while Sophie and Clara worked on an art project in the living room, Elias finally broke the seal. "My dearest Eli, if you're reading this, you've found someone who makes your heart want to try again. Good. I was worried. You'd be too stubborn to let yourself heal, that you'd use your love for me as a shield against future happiness. You always were terribly loyal, even when it hurt you. I can imagine you now, analyzing everything, wondering if enough time has passed, if it's right, if you're betraying my memory. Stop it. Love isn't a finite resource that runs out when shared. It grows, multiplies, finds new spaces to fill. Remember how we met? You were so concerned about the difference in our backgrounds, convinced your security guard's salary wasn't enough for a private school teacher from old money. But love didn't care about bank accounts then, and it shouldn't now. Sophie will be older when you read this. Old enough, I hope, to understand that hearts can hold many loves at once. I trust you've kept my memory alive for her, told her about her crazy mom, who danced in rainstorms and insisted on reading 3 bedtime stories every night. But darling, she needs more than memories. She needs a mother's love in the present tense, someone to help her navigate growing up, to show her how to be a strong woman in this world. I don't know who she is, this woman who's awakened your heart, but I know you, Eli. You wouldn't let yourself feel this way unless she was special, unless she loved our Sophie, unless she understood that she's not replacing me, but adding her own chapter to our family's story. Tell her about me. Not to make her compete with a ghost, but to help her understand the foundation of love you and Sophie built, even in grief. Share our happy memories and hard times both. Let her know that she's not erasing the past, but helping write the future. And Eli, let yourself be happy, really, truly happy. The kind of happiness that doesn't need qualifiers or explanations. You're not betraying our love by finding joy again. You're honoring everything we believed about love's ability to heal and grow. Sophie might struggle with the changes. Help her understand that love multiplies. It doesn't divide. Her heart, like yours, can hold both the mother she lost and the mother she's gaining. What a gift to be loved by 2 mothers, even if one watches from beyond. I have to rest now. The medication makes writing difficult. But know this. I died feeling completely, utterly loved by you and Sophie. What a gift that was. If you've found someone who makes you feel ready to share that kind of love again, then she must be remarkable indeed. Give her my ring. Yes, the one you're still wearing as you read this. I know you, remember? Not because you need to let me go, but because love's circle should continue. Tell her its history, how it belonged to my grandmother, who also married for love against her family's wishes. Let it be a bridge between past and future, not a wall. Most of all, be happy, my love. Live fully, love deeply, and know that somewhere I'm smiling, watching our little girl grow up, surrounded by twice the love we dreamed of giving her. All my love, forever and then some, Sarah P.S. And if you're still overthinking this, still wondering, if it's too soon or not right or somehow disloyal, then consider this my last directive as your wife. Get out of your own way and let love in. That's an order. Elias looked up from the letter to find his vision blurred with tears. Through the open bedroom door, He could hear Clara and Sophie laughing about something in the living room. The sound of his past and future harmonizing in a way Sarah had somehow known was possible. The ring on his finger caught the afternoon light. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt its weight not as a memorial to what he'd lost, but as a connection to all the love that had shaped his life, and all the love still to come. The Whitmore Foundation annual gala invitation glittered in its cream-colored envelope, gold lettering announcing a night of transformative giving. Clara had attended 20 such events before, but never like this, never with her security. A guard fiancé and his daughter as her official family. Do I have to wear the bow tie? Elias adjusted his collar in the mirror while Sophie twirled in her new dress, a compromise between Clara's shopping instincts and his modest preferences. The deep blue fabric matched Clara's gown, a detail Sophie had insisted upon. We should look like a real family, she'd declared, making both adults catch their breath at the simple truth of it. The bow tie stays, Clara smiled, reaching up to straighten it. But I promise if anyone makes a pretty woman reference, we can leave early. Her attempted humor masked genuine anxiety. Tonight would be their first formal appearance in her world, and despite her public bravado, she worried. The ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel hadn't changed. Same crystal chandeliers, same marble floors, same orchestra playing tastefully bland, classical music. But Clara's entrance with Elias and Sophie created a ripple effect of whispers and stares that even the orchestra couldn't mask. Margaret Whitmore held court near the champagne fountain, her smile tightening as they approached. Clara, darling, and Elias, how democratic of you to join us. Her gaze swept over Sophie's dress with calculation. And this must be your granddaughter, Clara interrupted firmly. Sophie, this is your grandmother Whitmore. She has one of Boston's finest private art collections. Perhaps you'd like to tell her about your recent gallery showing at school. Sophie, either immune to or ignorant of the social tension, launched into an enthusiastic description of her art project. Margaret's practiced society smile faltered in the face of such genuine enthusiasm. Despite herself, she found herself engaged in a discussion about brush techniques and color theory with an 8-year-old who clearly knew what she was talking about. Clara's been teaching me, Sophie explained proudly. She says I have a natural eye for composition, just like my mom did. The mention of Sarah caused another ripple of whispers among the eavesdropping guests, but Sophie continued undaunted. Did you know my mom was an art teacher? Clara says that's why she and Dad connected, because they both understand how art helps people's hearts grow. Elias watched his daughter charm the formidable Margaret Whitmore, while across the room, Clara handled board members and society matrons with practiced grace. He felt like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture until Harrison Blake approached, drink in hand and condescension in his smile. Quite a step up from checking IDs at the door, isn't it? Harrison's whisper carried just far enough. Tell me, how does it feel to win the lottery? Though I suppose that's not quite accurate. You haven't won until you actually make it to the altar. Elias thought of Sarah's letter, of Clara's burnt attempts at ironing, of Sophie's drawings of their growing family. Actually, he replied, quietly, I feel sorry for you. Because you'll never understand that the real lottery win isn't about money at all. Clara appeared at his side as if summoned, her hand finding his with practiced ease. Harrison? She nodded coolly. I see you've met my fiancé. Did he mention he's just been appointed to the Foundation's Education Outreach Committee? His perspective on actual community needs is exactly what we've been missing. The evening continued its delicate dance of social politics and genuine emotions. Sophie's artistic knowledge impressed several prominent donors, while Elias's quiet dignity and obvious devotion to both Clara and his daughter began to shift some of the more entrenched opinions. Later, during a quiet moment by the dessert table, Clara found Elias watching Sophie teach one of the board members' children how to properly hold a paintbrush. She'd insisted on bringing her travel art kit. Penny for your thoughts? She asked. Just thinking about worlds colliding, he replied, taking her hand, and how sometimes the collision creates something beautiful instead of destruction. Across the room, Margaret Whitmore was overheard telling her friends, "Well, at least the child has cultivation. And did you see how she corrected Edward's grandson about Monet's early work? Perhaps Clara's choice isn't entirely without merit. It wasn't acceptance, not quite yet." But as Sophie's laughter rang out over the orchestra's measured tones, as Clara's society mask softened into genuine joy, as Elias found his footing in this glittering world while keeping his own solid ground, it felt like a beginning, a new chapter in their story, written in Sophie's art supplies, Elias's steady presence, and Clara's brave defiance of everything she'd been raised to believe about what made a life worthwhile. The Whitmore family trust document landed on Clara's desk with the weight of generations. Her father's attorney, grey-suited and grave-faced, stood before her with practiced patience while she read the amended terms. Upon marriage to a party deemed unsuitable by the Board of Trustees, all rights and privileges of the primary beneficiary shall be immediately suspended. The morning had started so differently. Sophie showing Clara how to make French toast, Dad's way with cinnamon. Elias stealing kisses between bites, the three of them planning their weekend despite the persistent paparazzi outside. Then the call came from her father's office. Urgent. Family business. It's quite simple, really, the attorney explained, his voice carefully neutral. The Board of Trustees, your mother primarily, feels that recent decisions warrant additional protection of family interests. He paused, then added softly, "There is, of course, an alternative provision. Should you reconsider your current arrangement, the trust remains unchanged." Clara stared at the document, her finger tracing the Whitmore family crest embossed at the top. The trust represented more than money. It was generations of influence, the foundation's future, everything she'd been raised to protect, and now it was a weapon aimed straight at her heart. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophie with a photo of her latest art project. "For my new mom," the caption read, making Clara's vision blur. Another buzz. Elias, checking if she was okay after the sudden summons. Such simple messages, carrying the weight of real love. "The board requires your answer by week's end," the attorney continued. "They understand this is a significant—" "No, they don't," Clara interrupted, her voice steady. "They don't understand anything about significance." She stood, gathering the trust document. "But I'll give them their answer now." She found her parents in the mansion's library, her mother orchestrating this ambush from her usual armchair. "Really, Clara," Margaret began, "this has gone on long enough. The foundation's donations are down, the society pages are relentless, and now I hear you're actually considering moving into that apartment." "Enough," Clara's voice cut through her mother's practiced speech. "You want to talk about the trust? Let's talk about trust. Let's talk about how Dad built this foundation on the belief that worth isn't measured by wealth. Let's talk about how you've twisted that into this bribe." "It's not a bribe, darling," her father spoke finally. "It's protection. For you, for the family name, for appearances," Clara finished. "Because heaven forbid a Whitmore choose love over social status. Heaven forbid we actually practice what our foundation preaches about human dignity and worth." She placed the trust document on her father's desk, then reached for her phone, pulling up Sophie's text. "Look at this. Really look. An 8-year-old girl who's known nothing but loss is brave enough to open her heart to love again. Her father, who works 2 jobs and still volunteers at her school, shows more dignity than any society gentleman I've ever met. They've taught me more about worth and trust than this document ever could." Margaret rose, her composure cracking slightly. "You're being melodramatic. No one's asking you to end the relationship. Just keep it private. Make it one of your charitable projects if you must. But marriage? Really, Clara?" The words hit like a physical blow, but Clara stood straighter. "You know what I realized? Sarah, Elias's late wife, she came from money too. old money, like us. She chose love over family expectations, and even when she was dying, even when her family refused to help with medical bills, she never regretted choosing love. I used to think that was tragic. Now I think it was brave. She took out her foundation ID card and placed it beside the trust document. I resigned from the board, effective immediately. The foundation deserves leadership that actually believes in human dignity, not just the appearance of it. Don't be foolish, her father warned. Everything you've worked for. I'm not being foolish, Clara interrupted. For the first time in my life, I'm being completely clear-sighted. Keep the trust, keep the society page's approval, keep all of it. I choose love. Her phone buzzed again. Elias sending a photo of Sophie arranging her art supplies for their weekend lesson. Such a simple image, worth more than any trust fund. Clara, her mother called as she reached the door. If you walk away now, I know. Clara turned back one last time. I'll be walking away from everything you taught me about worth and status and suitable matches. But I'll be walking toward everything Dad originally built this foundation to represent. The belief that real worth isn't in a bank account or a family name. It's in how we love. She left the mansion's library for what might be the last time, the weight of generations lifting with each step. The trust document lay abandoned. On her father's desk, its power to intimidate finally broken by something much stronger, the simple truth of a love worth choosing. The engagement ring caught the morning light differently here in Elias's modest kitchen than it had in Clara's penthouse. Simple, elegant, yet undeniably valuable, much like the choice it represented. Clara had sold her designer watch to buy it, ignoring Elias's protests. I want to do this right, she'd insisted, with my own money, not the trust funds. Now, a week after walking away from her inheritance, Clara stood at the counter attempting to pack Sophie's lunch, while Elias watched with barely concealed amusement. The peanut butter goes inside the bread, not just around it, he offered, earning a playfully exasperated look. I had staff for this, she reminded him, but her tone was light. The morning newspapers lay unopened on the table, their headlines surely screaming about the Whitmore heiress's fall from grace. They'd stopped reading them days ago. Had staff, Sophie corrected, entering the kitchen in her school uniform. But now you have us, and I like your messy sandwiches. She hugged Clara impulsively, a gesture that still made Clara's heart skip. They taste like love. The past week had been a crash course in reality for Clara. Her credit cards cancelled, her foundation position vacant, her society friends suddenly too busy to return calls. She'd moved into Elias's apartment temporarily, learning the intricate dance of sharing a bathroom with an 8-year-old and a man who worked night shifts. Your mother called again, Elias mentioned carefully, watching Clara wrestle with the sandwich bags. Something about a compromise? Clara's hands stilled. Margaret's idea of compromise involved Clara keeping her inheritance in exchange for downgrading her relationship with Elias to a private arrangement. The suggestion had made her physically ill. No compromises, she said firmly, finally conquering the sandwich bag. Not on this, not on us. The ring on her finger represented more than just her commitment to Elias. It symbolized her choice to build something real, something earned through love rather than inherited through privilege. She'd started applying for art teacher positions at local schools, reviving the passion she'd abandoned for the foundation's prestige. Ms. Peterson says you're coming to help with art class today, Sophie announced, brightening their heavy moment. She says it's good to have a real artist teaching us. About that, Clara began, but Elias interrupted. She got the job, he revealed, unable to contain his pride. Full-time art teacher, starting next semester. Sophie's squeal of delight drew a laugh from Clara. It's just part-time for now, she clarified, and the salary's barely more than my monthly shoe budget used to be. But you're happy, Elias observed. Not really a question. She was. Happier than all her years of society galas and foundation. Meetings combined. The evening before, she'd spent hours helping Sophie with her art project, then fallen asleep on their worn couch, exhausted but content. Elias had covered her with Sarah's old quilt, a gesture that spoke volumes about belonging. A knock at the door interrupted their morning routine. Clara tensed, expecting more reporters, but Elias returned with a surprising visitor, Catherine, Clara's younger sister. "The prodigal artist returns," Catherine announced, sweeping in with her usual dramatic flair. "Though I suppose you're the prodigal one now, sis." She handed Sophie a set of professional-grade art supplies. "From your cool aunt, who totally gets why your mom chose love over money." Clara felt tears threaten. Catherine had always been the family rebel, choosing art over society's expectations. Now she was the only Whitmore still speaking to Clara. "Mom's a mess," Catherine reported, accepting coffee in a chipped mug. "Dad's pretending nothing's happened. The foundation board's in chaos. It's absolutely perfect." She grinned. "You've given those stuffed shirts more scandal than I ever managed. And I ran away to Paris with a jazz musician." Sophie, already deep into her new art supplies, looked up. But Clara didn't run away. She ran toward us. The simple wisdom of children. Clara felt Elias's hand find hers, his thumb brushing over the ring that meant so much more than its monetary. "Value. The Foundation's launching a new PR campaign," Catherine continued, "returning to traditional values or some such nonsense. But you know what? Their donations are actually down since you left. Turns out some of the bigger donors appreciated having someone real in charge, someone who actually believed in human dignity over social status." Clara barely heard her. She was watching Sophie show Elias how to use the new pastels, his security guard's hands gentle with the delicate materials. This was dignity. This was value. This was worth choosing, again and again. "I should get ready." "For school," Sophie announced, carefully packing away her art supplies. "Mom, don't forget you promised to help with the class mural today." The word "mom," still new on Sophie's lips, still precious every time. Clara's engagement ring caught the light again as she reached for her daughter, her sister, her fiancé, her real inheritance worth more than any trust fund could offer. The house key felt foreign in Clara's hand, its brass surface unmarked by the patina of use. Not a mansion key, not a penthouse key, just a simple key to a modest three-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. Their home. The realtor's sign, in. The front yard still bore its sold sticker, and moving boxes lined the driveway. "Are you sure about this?" Elias asked, not for the first time. They could have afforded better with Clara's art teacher salary combined with his security work, but they'd chosen this place deliberately. Equal distance between Sophie's school and their jobs, a small yard for summer art lessons, and most importantly, a fresh start that belonged to all of them. "Look what I found," Sophie called from the backyard. They followed her voice to discover her examining a weathered wooden treehouse. "Can we turn it into an art studio?" Clara exchanged glances with Elias, both remembering the state of the art room she'd left behind in her penthouse. But Sophie's excitement was infectious, and already Clara could envision summer afternoons painting among the trees. "Best house ever," Sophie declared, then paused. "But can we bring Mom's rosebush from the apartment? Dad says it's the last thing she planted." "Of course," Clara answered before Elias could. "We'll put it right there, under your art treehouse. That way she's still watching over your creativity." The moving truck arrived, carrying their carefully merged belongings. Clara's art books found homes next to Elias's well-worn paperbacks. Sophie's growing collection of supplies took over one of the spare rooms. The studio, she dubbed it immediately. The kitchen filled with a mix of Clara's high-end cooking equipment and Elias's practical loved utensils. "Where should this go?" Himi asked, holding up Sarah's wedding photo. The question carried weight beyond simple decoration. Clara took the frame gently, studying Sarah's laughing face. "Here," she decided, placing it on the mantel, "where she can see all of us." She added a recent photo of their new family beside. It Sophie between them at her school art show, all three beaming, past and present side by side. The day passed in a blur of boxes and decisions. Clara's designer clothes hung somewhat incongruously next to Elias's uniforms in their shared closet. Sophie's art began appearing on walls almost immediately, marking their territory with color and life. Evening found them sitting on the floor of their empty living room, eating pizza off paper plates. "Remember our first dinner together?" Sophie asked. "When Dad couldn't pay and you helped?" Clara smiled at the memory. "Best money I ever spent." "Better than your Jimmy Choos," Elias teased, referencing the designer shoes she'd recently sold to help with the down payment. "Much better," she assured him, accepting another slice of pizza. "Though I still maintain that no one needs 8 different pizza places on speed dial." 9, Sophie corrected seriously. "Dad says options are important in life." They laughed, the sound echoing differently in their new space. Through the window, they could see Sarah's rosebush, newly planted under the treehouse. Clara had spent an hour getting the placement just right, wanting Sophie to feel her mother's presence in this new chapter. A car door slammed outside, making them tense. Paparazzi had become less frequent, but hadn't entirely disappeared. Instead, they heard Catherine's voice. "Hello, I brought housewarming wine and paint supplies." Soon the empty living room filled with more family. Catherine with her artistic chaos, Amy with her teacher's practical advice about the neighborhood, even a surprise visit from Clara's father, arriving awkwardly but alone, without Margaret's society-conscious presence. "It's nice," he offered, looking around. "Solid bones, good light for Sophie's art." He handed Clara a package wrapped in simple brown paper. "Your grandmother's easel. She was a painter too, before society expectations." He trailed off, then added quietly, "Maybe some traditions are meant to be broken." Later, after their guests had gone, and Sophie had fallen asleep in her new room, walls already bearing the beginnings of a mural, Clara and Elias stood in their kitchen. The key rack held their 3 keys, identical now, no gold-plated status symbols among them. "Having second thoughts?" Elias asked, watching her take in their smaller, simpler space. Clara reached for him, her paint-stained fingers finding his work-worn ones. Through the window, moonlight illuminated Sarah's rose bush, its shadows mingling with the treehouse's artistic potential. Their merged lives, their shared future, their blended family, all of it condensed into this moment, this choice, this key. "Only about letting Sophie paint the kitchen ceiling," she answered. "Everything else," she squeezed his hand, "everything else is exactly right." The wedding photo captured a moment of pure joy. Clara in a simple white dress she'd chosen over her mother's suggested designer gown, Elias wearing his father's restored suit, and Sophie between them in a blue dress she'd helped design, her face glowing with happiness. But the story behind the image told so much more. The morning had begun with Clara alone in Sophie's art treehouse, now converted into a bridal preparation space. Around her, Sophie's drawings of their family covered the walls, a gallery of love's evolution. She touched up her own makeup, having declined her mother's offered team of stylists. Through the window, she could see Sarah's rosebush blooming beneath, as if offering its blessing. "You look like a fairy tale princess," Sophie declared, climbing up with her own junior bridesmaid dress swishing. "But better, because you're real." She handed Clara a drawing, their family at the altar, Sarah watching from above with a smile. "Mom would have liked you. Dad says you're brave like her." Down in the house, Elias adjusted his tie in the bedroom mirror, his fingers brushing against the empty space where Sarah's ring had rested for so long. The ring now hung on a delicate chain around Sophie's neck, a physical link between past and future, mother and daughter, old love and new. They'd chosen their backyard for the ceremony, defying Margaret Whitmore's horrified suggestions of grand cathedrals and society venues. String lights twinkled in the afternoon sun, and chairs were arranged in a casual semicircle. Amy had helped Sophie scatter wildflower petals along the makeshift aisle. Like Mum's garden, Sophie had insisted. The guest list reflected their merged worlds. Elias's fellow security guards sat beside Foundation board members who'd stood by Clara. Catherine flitted about with her camera, documenting everything. Even Clara's father attended, though Margaret's chair remained conspicuously empty. Sarah's parents, after years of silence, had sent a surprise gift, Sarah's old art supplies for Sophie, with a note about healing and family. Sophie took her role as both flower girl and junior bridesmaid, seriously proudly wearing Sarah's ring necklace over her blue dress. She'd insisted on carrying her sketchbook down the aisle along with her flowers. "In case I need to capture something important," she'd explained with artistic gravity. The ceremony itself was simple, honest, real. Clara walked herself down the aisle to the sound of Sophie's school choir singing, another touch that would have scandalized Margaret Whitmore. Elias waited under an arch covered in roses, matching Sarah's bush, his eyes holding the same wonder Clara had seen that first night in the restaurant. Their vows, written in secret, echoed each other in unexpected ways. Elias spoke of second chances, and brave hearts, of love that builds bridges between worlds. Clara promised to always make messy sandwiches with love, to honor the foundation their family was built on while helping write new chapters. Sophie's surprise addition to the ceremony, approved in secret by Amy, was a drawing she'd worked on for weeks. She presented it during the vows, a family tree with roots deep in the ground, branches reaching toward heaven. Sarah's name graced one of the strongest branches, supporting new growth where Clara's name now joined Elias's with Sophie, blooming between them. "Family isn't just about who's here," Sophie announced to the gathered guests, her voice clear and strong. "It's about all the love that helps us grow." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as Clara and Elias added their rings to the promises they'd already made in 1,000 small moments. Clara's simple band matched the one she'd bought Elias. No family heirlooms or status symbols, just circles of commitment chosen together. The reception turned their quiet backyard into a celebration of worlds colliding joyfully. Security guards taught society matrons to dance. Foundation board members sampled Amy's homemade cookies alongside Elias's work colleagues. Sophie set up an art station where guests added to her family drawing, the paper filling with messages of love and hope. As evening fell and lights twinkled, Clara found herself by Sarah's rosebush, its blooms glowing in the dusk. Elias joined her, Sophie between them, just like in the photo that would capture this moment. "Look." Sophie pointed to a star appearing above them. "Mom's watching." The camera clicked, freezing the moment. Clara in her simple dress, Elias in his father's suit, Sophie glowing between them. Behind them, Sarah's roses bloomed. The Treehouse Art Studio stood ready for future creations, and their gathered loved ones celebrated not just a marriage, but the building of something rare and precious, a family crafted from loss and love, choice and chance, past and future, all blooming together under the evening sky. The family portrait hung in their living room, taken 1 year after the wedding. Clara helping Sophie with her art portfolio, Elias watching them both with quiet joy, Sarah's rosebush visible through the window behind them. But it was the collection of smaller moments around it that told their true story. Sophie's first art show invitation featured young artist Sophie Rowan. She'd used both her names now, honoring Sarah while embracing Clara as her second mother. The show had been held at her school, where Clara now taught art full-time. Her students' works filled the halls with color and life, but Sophie's piece held the center, a triptych of family portraits. Sarah's memory, Clara's arrival, and their united present. Margaret Whitmore had attended the show, her first acknowledgement of their family since the wedding. She'd stood before Sophie's triptych for a long time, her society mask softening as she studied her granddaughter's interpretation of love's evolution. "She has real talent," Margaret had admitted to Clara. It wasn't quite acceptance, but it was a beginning. The foundation had changed too. Clara's departure had sparked a reassessment of its mission. Now, under new leadership that included Elias on its community advisory board, it focused more on actual needs than social appearances. They'd launched an arts education program for underfunded schools inspired by Sophie's journey. Elias had finally left his second job, the night shift no longer necessary with Clara's teaching salary and his promotion to head of security. Their modest home filled with the sounds of normal family life. Sophie's art projects spreading beyond. Her studio, Clara's attempts at cooking, still sometimes disastrous. Elias's quiet strength holding them all together. Sarah's presence remained not as a ghost, but as a foundation. Her ring still hung around Sophie's neck, now accompanied by a locket containing the family photo from the wedding. The rosebush had flourished, spreading its blooms beneath Sophie's. Art treehouse where Clara held summer classes for neighborhood children. One evening, as summer light faded, they sat in their backyard. Sophie worked on a new piece while Clara graded student portfolios, and Elias tended the garden he'd learned to love. The moment was so ordinary, so perfect, that Clara had to capture it with her phone, another snapshot for their growing collection. "Remember when you couldn't pay the restaurant bill?" Sophie asked suddenly, looking up from her artwork. "And Mom, helped?" Clara and Elias exchanged glances, remembering that pivotal evening. "Best declined credit card ever." Elias smiled, reaching for Clara's hand. "The other kids at school still sometimes ask about it," Sophie continued, adding details to her drawing, "about how you're an heiress who gave up everything for love, like a fairy tale." "Not everything," Clara corrected gently. "I gained more than I ever gave up." She looked at their home, modest by Whitmore standards, but rich with love and creativity. Sometimes the best things in life aren't things at all. The evening wrapped around them, peaceful and warm. From inside came the sounds of Catherine and Amy arriving for their weekly family dinner, another tradition born in their new life. Catherine's latest art exhibition had featured a piece about Clara and Elias's story, titled simply, "Worth." "Dad?" Sophie held up her finished drawing, their family tree again, but with new additions. Catherine and Amy had their own branches now. Even Margaret had a small bud beginning to bloom. "Do you think this is how Mom sees us, all together and growing?" Elias touched Sarah's ring on Sophie's neck, then squeezed Clara's hand. "I think she sees exactly what we all see, love making room for more love." Clara looked at their family portrait through the window, at the life they'd built together. Her mother had been wrong about so many things, but especially about worth and dignity. Real worth wasn't in trust funds or society pages. It was in Sophie's fearless art, in Elias's quiet strength, in the way they'd all chosen love over expectations. The portrait caught the evening light, seeming to glow with its own inner warmth. It showed not just three people, but a journey. From a declined credit card to a approved love. From separate worlds to a shared one. From loss to healing to joy. As night fell, their backyard lit up with the same string lights from their wedding. Sophie started planning her next art piece. Elias and Clara exchanged knowing smiles as Catherine's voice drifted out. "Anyone want to hear about Mom's latest society page meltdown?" Just another evening in their perfectly imperfect life. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better, a real one, built on choice and chance, grief and joy, old love and new, all captured in a family portrait that told the story of how sometimes the richest lives are measured not in dollars, but in the courage to choose love over everything else.